My name is Eleanor Barker. I am 75 years old, and that number seems strange to me because inside I am still the young woman full of ambition that I was 40 years ago. Many of you have seen my previous video, and I am infinitely grateful for the warmth you have shown me. But today, I want to be completely honest. I want to talk about what was hidden behind the closed doors of our home. My husband David and I were married for 43 years. That's a lifetime. For almost half a century, I was convinced that our union was a model for others to follow. I built a career as a senior architect, designing huge buildings, calculating every beam and every inch of space. My mind was always occupied with drawings, deadlines, and efficiency. David was an engineer, just as practical and reliable a person. We were a great team. Our house was immaculate. Our bills were always paid on time. Our children wanted for nothing. We almost never raised our voices at each other. But here's the bitter irony. You can build the strongest house in the world, but if you don't fill it with living warmth, it will remain just a concrete box. We were experts at functioning together, but we became absolute amateurs at feeling each other. We shared the same bed for 4 decades, but fell asleep in different worlds. We were professionals in life, but strangers in love. David left me 8 years ago. It all happened frighteningly fast. In March, he was diagnosed with severe kidney failure. We thought we had years ahead of us, but medicine proved powerless. In 4 months, he went from being an active man to a person confined to a hospital bed. And in those last weeks, when all that could be heard in the ward was the steady beeping of the machines, our familiar world collapsed. One evening, when the sun was flooding the ward with golden light, he looked at me in a way he hadn't looked at me in a very long time. He took my hand, his skin was dry and thin, like parchment, and said quietly, "Eleanor, we spent so much time trying to be productive and do the right thing, instead of being truly close." At that moment, those words stung my pride. I was so proud of being the right wife. I was always there for him. I organized his treatment. I was his support. I wanted to argue, to remind him of our achievements, of our stability. But I remained silent, and that silence was the beginning of my realization. I realized that the comfort I had so carefully created was just a screen. Comfort is convenient, but it is not a connection. We were so afraid of disrupting our well-established rhythm of life, so afraid of appearing vulnerable or impractical, that we locked our true feelings deep in the basements of our souls. We built a perfect facade, while inside everything was slowly covered with the dust of oblivion. In those last days, I realized that we had lived a long life, but we had barely begun to truly know each other before the very end. For many years, David tried to reach out to me, but he did it so quietly and delicately that my busy architect's mind simply classified it as noise. He suggested things that seemed absurd or untimely to me at the time. For example, he suddenly became enthusiastic about learning French together. He would say, "Eleanor, imagine how we will sit on the terrace and understand what Charles Aznavour is singing about." Or he would beg me to help him in the garden. He wanted to plant a real apothecary garden with lavender and rare herbs. He bought seeds, laid out his tools, and waited for me. And me? I always had a good reason why not today. I was too tired after work, too busy checking estimates, too focused on serious things. I considered his hobbies a cute whim that we would definitely have time for, later, someday, when we retired. I didn't understand that he wasn't inviting me to the garden or to language classes. He was inviting me into his heart. Every time I said, "It's not a priority right now," or "We don't have the money for that," it was a blow to his desire to be one with me. I thought that love was when I provided for him and remained faithful. I believed that grand things, buying a new car or insurance, were the foundation. But I was wrong. The foundation is when you throw away your blueprints and go dig in the ground with him just because it's important to him. I preferred to be right in my rationality, rather than just being there for his passions. Gradually, seeing my cold logic and constant busyness, David changed. It didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, almost imperceptible retreat. One "not today" led to hundreds of quiet evenings. One day, he simply stopped calling me into the garden. He stopped playing French records when I entered the room. He began to study vocabulary alone, sitting in his chair, while I sat a meter away from him, buried in my laptop screen. We became masters of parallel living. You know, that's when you're in the same space, even breathing the same air, but your thoughts never intersect. We became incredibly polite. Pass the salt, please. Have you seen my keys? What's for dinner? We became experts in logistics, but complete failures in intimacy. I saw that he found solace in his interests, in his circle of gardening friends, and I felt relieved. I told myself, it's good that he has a hobby, now he won't distract me. I called it healthy personal space, but in reality it was a space filled with my indifference. I didn't notice how he gradually got used to the idea that I wasn't the person with whom he could share the joy of the first flower blooming or a successfully learned phrase. I was physically present. I was his lawful wife. I was a reliable partner in the business called family, but as a woman, as a close friend, I was slowly disappearing from his life. And the worst thing was that I was so blinded by my productivity that I didn't even realize the price we were paying for it. We saved time like savings in a bank, not realizing that this bank was about to go bankrupt. One of the most painful wounds in my memory is his dream of Provence. David was obsessed with the south of France. As an engineer, he admired the way the light fell on old stone villas, and as a gardener, he dreamed of seeing endless lavender fields. For years, he collected magazine clippings and marked small villages like Gorda or Russia on the map, where he would like to stay. He would bring it up every few years. Eleanor, let's rent a house for a month. We'll just drink wine, stroll through the markets, and take our time. And every time, as an experienced architect, I would erect a wall of logical arguments. David, I have an important project right now. The flight is too long. Your kidneys sometimes act up. Let's wait until we finish paying off the mortgage. I always found a way to turn his dream into an unreasonable waste of resources. I sincerely believed that I was protecting our well-being by postponing life to a mythical later. But during his last month in the hospital, when he was barely able to get out of bed, he brought it up one last time. There was no anger in his voice, only a quiet, faded sadness. He said, you know, even in my dreams, I could smell the lavender and feel the warmth of the stones. It's a shame I never got to show you that place. Those words hit me harder than any accusation. I realized that he didn't just want to go on vacation. He wanted to share with me a moment of pure, aimless happiness where I wasn't the senior architect and he wasn't the retired engineer. He wanted to see me alive and engaged. Now, when I look at those clippings, I realize that a week of my time and the cost of the tickets are nothing compared to the hole in my soul that this trip will never fill. We saved money, but we bankrupted our memories. After the funeral, I had to sort through his office. Among the drawings and technical reference books, I found a stack of old work notebooks. I thought I would find structural calculations there, but instead I discovered something like a diary of feelings that he had kept for decades. Reading them, I felt like I was getting to know the man I had lived with for 43 years all over again. In the margins between the diagrams were his thoughts addressed to me. In entries from 10 years ago, he wrote, Eleanor came home late again today. I made dinner and wanted to tell her how beautifully the jasmine is blooming today, but she was so absorbed in her project that she didn't even look up from her plate. I feel like a ghost in my own home. Elsewhere, dated a year later, I found even more frightening lines. She is so proud that we never argue. But she doesn't understand that we don't argue because I've stopped trying to argue. It's easier for me to keep quiet than to run into her wall of rationality. My feelings for her are just an error in her calculations. Reading this, I gasped. I saw myself through his eyes, a cold, efficient, always right woman who had turned love into a well-managed enterprise. He wrote about the moments when he physically touched my hand and I pulled away to fix some papers. He wrote about his loneliness, which was all the more unbearable because it happened in the presence of his loved one. I was his reliable rear guard, but I was never his refuge. I realized that all these years I had not been living with my husband, but with my idea of him, while the real David was slowly fading away from emotional starvation right before my eyes. After David's death, Many colleagues and friends approached me to express their condolences. They said, "Eleanor, you were such an exemplary couple. You were such a devoted, such an adequate wife." And every time I heard that word, adequate, I felt something inside me tighten with pain. They said it as a compliment, but to me now it sounds like a sentence. We are used to thinking that being a good partner means fulfilling a minimum set of obligations, not cheating, not yelling, providing for the family, being there when someone is sick. But I realized that this is an incredibly low, almost humiliating bar for what is called love. I was adequate. I was functional. I was a reliable cog in the mechanism of our family. But being adequate does not mean loving. Love requires vulnerability. It requires a willingness to be illogical. It requires actively creating intimacy, not just maintaining the status quo. I was so absorbed in my role as the architect of life that I forgot to be just a woman who is capable of sincere passion, of foolishness for the sake of a loved one, of putting her partner's feelings above her own comfort and plans. We often confuse the absence of conflict with harmony. But true harmony is when two souls sound in unison, and our absence of conflict was just silence in an empty room where no one dared to speak first. I fulfilled the terms of the contract, but I completely failed at human connection. The biggest threat to your relationship is not cheating, not a loud scandal, and not some sudden betrayal. At least these things elicit a reaction. They require action. The real, silent killer is indifference. It is the slowest, most subtle destruction that occurs when you stop asking questions. You look at your partner and think, "I already know everything about him. I know what he'll say, I know how he'll react." And at that moment, you stop seeing him as a living person full of secrets and dreams. You start seeing him as a function. In my case, indifference was disguised as respect for personal space and stability. I stopped being interested in what David was thinking when he looked out the window. I stopped noticing the sparkle in his eyes when he found a rare variety of seeds for his garden. One "not now, I'm busy" from me led to him simply stopping asking. One "that's nonsense" from me silenced him for years. It's like soil erosion. You don't notice the ground slipping away from under your feet until one day you find yourself standing on the edge of a precipice. We became strangers not because we hated each other, but because we stopped being curious. We stopped putting energy into getting to know each other again every day. Closeness is not something you achieve once and put in your pocket. It is something you have to build and protect every morning, especially when you are tired, when you are stressed at work, or when you are simply comfortable. Remember, comfort is often just another name for laziness of the heart. It's been 8 years since David left, and I still live in our perfect house, which now feels like a huge tomb to me. Every time I walk past his study or go out into the garden, which has started to grow wild without his caring hands, I physically feel the weight of lost time. You know what's most unbearable? It's the realization of how little effort it would have taken for things to be different. Looking back now, I realize that one trip to Provence would not have ruined our family. One evening spent studying French verbs instead of checking working drawings would not have ruined my career. But these little things would have saved his soul from loneliness and filled my memory with light instead of this gray fog of regret. I did go to Provence alone, 3 years after his death. I stood in the middle of a lavender field in the village of Valençol, breathing in the very scent he had dreamed of, and cried like never before in my life. It was beautiful, but that beauty was dead without him. I felt like a thief who had stolen his dream and come to enjoy it alone. I realized that the value of the moment is not in the place itself, but in seeing the joy reflected in the eyes of a loved one. Loneliness is when you have all the money and time in the world to go anywhere, but there is no one to tug at your sleeve and say, "Look, Eleanor, how beautiful it is." Don't wait for the perfect moment, it doesn't exist. There is only now, and it slips through your fingers while you make your rational plans. There are no building plans on my desk now. There is only one photograph in a silver frame. It's our honeymoon, 1978. David is very young, with a mop of unruly hair, laughing as he tries to hold an umbrella in the wind. There is so much hope in his eyes, so much willingness to follow me to the ends of the earth. And when I look at this photo today at 75, I see more than just my husband. I see a man whose trust one betrayed with my indifference. I was so busy being right in every argument and successful in every project that I completely forgot to be tender. I was an excellent architect, but I built a house without windows, into which the light of his love could not penetrate. My advice to you, those who are younger, those who are currently caught up in the whirlwind of life, stop. Right now, look at the person next to you. Not as a familiar piece of furniture or a partner in everyday life. Look at them as a miracle that could disappear tomorrow. Ask them something you don't know. Do the silly thing they ask you to do. Take those gardening classes, sign up for dance lessons, buy tickets to the country of their dreams, even if it seems impractical to you. Life is not the sum of your achievements, it is the sum of the moments when you were truly together. Don't be adequate. Be crazy, be involved, be loving. Because at the end of the road, when the machines in the hospital room start their final countdown, you won't remember your career. You will only remember the moments when you chose closeness over being right. If this story resonated with you or made you look at your loved ones differently, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new life stories and lessons from those who have already come a long way. We share experiences that cannot be bought, but that can change your destiny. Leave a comment. Has there been a not now moment in your life that you regret? Your sincerity can be a source of support for someone else. Share this video with someone you care about. Sometimes, one story heard at the right time can save a relationship from cold indifference. Take care of each other. You still have time.